Our next pair of industry experts are joining us all the way from Catchpoint Systems, wherein they both work as senior solutions engineers. Navya Dwarkanath comes with over 8 years of experience in assisting customers to define and refine their digital monitoring strategy. She is passionate about networking, distributing systems, and defining and improving availability and performance in a digital world. She is a strong advocate of the saying, that which is measured improves. She deeply enjoys the thrills of digging into monitoring data to unravel the unknowns. Joining her is Ankit Kumar, who has 6 years of working experience in helping enterprises solve the performance challenges related to web applications on a global scale. He is specialized in areas such as DNS, CDN, and cloud services. Today, on this mega platform, they both will be joining us and will be talking about bulletproofing the monitoring leg of DevSecOps with end user monitoring. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now give a hearty welcome to Navya Dwarkanath and Ankit Kumar. Hi, Ankit and Navya, over to you.
Hello, everyone. A very good morning. My name is Navya Dwarkanath. I'm a solutions engineer at Catchpoint, where I work with our customers and prospects in helping them define and refine their monitoring strategy. I personally really like being in the monitoring space because it gives me the front seat view into all the great things that are happening in the digital world. Today, I'm excited to be talking to you all about bulletproofing the monitoring leg of DevSecOps with end user monitoring. And I have with me my wonderful colleague, Ankit.
Thanks, Navya. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing good. My name is Ankit. I'm a solutions engineer with Catchpoint. Been in industry of monitoring for close to 6 years and work with our customers and prospects on various performance-related challenges on CDN, DNS, and cloud. Really excited to be part of this team panel of speakers. Hopefully, it's going to be very useful for all of us, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. Before we look at the benefits of end user monitoring in the DevSecOps space, I wanted to highlight some of the impact of security events on end users. From DDoS attacks that completely take your site down and make it inaccessible to something as simple as not renewing an SSL certificate has an impact on the end users, and it does result to a poor experience and frustration. Here's an excellent story of when Spotify forgot to renew their SSL certificate. We saw that users took to Twitter and complained about it. So that's something that we can say for sure that it results in a bad end user experience.
Now, this is a very interesting slide which has a lot of pointers for us. As we see a shift from DevOps to DevSecOps, we often encounter there are a lot of tools out there which tends to solve these security-related vulnerabilities at these different stages of DevSecOps lifecycle, right? You have tools, or open source tool, which actually scans your code before a developer puts up on a central repository or Git just to scan they have not entered any password or critical information, right? You have tools which allows you to share critical information like let's say secret of certain APIs, how you access it through a secure channel. But one important piece of this entire DevSecOps lifecycle is end user experience monitoring, which is how your end users actually experience when they access your application. Now, let's be honest, you can do all those right checks and balances onto different stages of this life cycle, but if your application is still vulnerable to SQL injection, your application could still be vulnerable to cross-site scripting attack. And let's not forget about DDoS, right? A massive DDoS attack is always around the corner, where petabytes of data per second is forced onto your application to bring down your entire application, right? So it's also important to have that end user experience monitoring in place to make sure to understand and to categorize these vulnerabilities and understand how the end users feel when they access your application.
That's so right, Ankit. And I think a large part of this is to do with the complexity of the systems and basically digital transformation playing the boon here and the blessing. So I think that it would help to kind of zoom in on the end-to-end workflow of what an end user accessing your application would look like. So here you have users coming in from multiple devices across the world. They're accessing your applications that are hosted either in your own data centers or on the cloud. These users, in turn, from their houses or corporate offices, they connect to last mile connections. So these connections could be something on the lines of either Comcast or Verizon that in turn connects to the backbone of the internet like Level 3, Telia. So let's just pause here for a bit because, I mean, even without adding the other pieces, we see that already there are so many security vulnerabilities as well as mitigation efforts that we can already identify. From the end user perspective, as Ankit mentioned, you have cross-site scripting, you have SQL injection to kind of ensure your keeping the malicious at bay, you're also having efforts like bot detection in place from a mitigation perspective. And then at the network layer, you have to be aware of attacks such as BGP hijacks. And on the server side and the cloud place, that is where all your DevSecOps life cycles really help. And that's where you're ensuring that you're securing your code, your infrastructure, your servers. For instance, something as simple as forgetting to renew a origin certificate will still result in an impact on the end user. Now let's bring in the missing pieces.
In a way, remember the DNS issue we were working last week in China?
That's like a great, thing there, right there, Ankit, because, I mean, DNS is complex enough, but then when you add the additional layer of multiple CDNs, because the issue that we were working on was a customer who had a multi-CDN approach and they were having DNS issues, and that makes it all the more complex. You have great things that you can do at the CDN front from a security perspective. You have WAF, you have DDoS mitigation, but at the same time, if you're having multiple CDNs, there are added layers of complexity. And with third parties, every new third party that you introduce within your application just makes the complexity exponential. Any vulnerability or a risk with them is like a risk for you.
All right, I think you have summed up pretty well. So just if you're wondering how does a combination of cloud and hair looks like, we have right in front of you. But jokes apart, I think when we spoke about different layers of complexity which comes when an end user is trying to access any application, it's also important what are the ways where you will gain visibility into these components, because it's important to get these monitored. So let's look at some of the examples what we have been working with our customers we have been able to catch, and then let's try to take a deep dive into those examples and then see how we can gain more visibility into those issues. Of course, nothing comes before DNS. It's not only the forefront of the application, but one of the most crucial component of any application, right? You can spend millions of dollars on your infrastructure, but one issue with DNS can bring your entire infrastructure down. This is a classic example of DNS spoofing, what we encountered in China, where we can see one of the assets in China, because of DNS spoofing attack, it started pointing out to Facebook IP. Now imagine if your DNS is vulnerable to that spoofing, imagine the pain it is going to cause. But the same was not true when the same DNS was tested from Mumbai, right? So this is a reminder of how synthetic monitoring helps to gain you that added layer of visibility into infrastructure issues, especially from DNS point of view. Now, taking one step ahead of DNS and trying to correlate DNS along with network layer, I think this is one example which will correlate with a lot of you who are there today on the call. This is specifically related to AWS DDoS attack, which happened last year, October. And we started seeing some DNS issues with the AWS assets when end users were trying to access it. But what was very interesting is when we looked at the traceroute data, we started seeing the traffic started to go to scrub data center of AWS DDoS mitigation mechanism, right? Which try to divert the traffic. Now, it's a good example that the DDoS mitigation mechanism was in place, was working, but also we should always understand if that is affecting any other component of your infrastructure. Now, in the bottom, you can see because of this, it also had a considerable amount of impact on the DNS resolution process. Close to 8 hours, the DNS was impacted for these AWS assets. Not to forget about SSL. I often get asked importance of SSL onto performance of any application, and no prize for guessing. This slide actually answers that, right? Zoom, no need for introduction. One of the top video conferencing tools out there. Uh, had an outage for good 8 to 10 minutes, and the reason, because the certificate for zoom.com had expired, and it took time for it to be replaced, right? So you can understand the layers when we are trying to peel it out, that if small issue like a certificate expiry can bring down your entire infrastructure down. This is just one more addition to how using catch points SSL test, you get that added visibility. In this case, you can set up a SSL test, which not only gives you information about your certificates, not only gives you information about when your certificate is going to expire, but also you could set up alerts so that you are proactively alerted in case your certificate is going to expire, so that you could proactively make changes and be aware of any kind of issues from SSL point of view. Now, before going into this multi-CDN and CDN aspect, I would like to go back to the example which Navya shared, where you have an end user, you have your application, and then you have these different components, right? We saw DNS, we saw CDN, we saw third party, and one of the important reasons why things get complex and customers go for implementing CDNs or multi-CDN is to improve performance. Now, which is always done in good intent, but when you do that, it also brings up a lot of complexity to the application. Now, imagine a situation you have a WAF rule which is configured for multiple CDNs what you're using, and your traffic is getting diverted to CDN, and the decision is happening on the fly. And now you want to make one change to your WAF configuration, which is very important to cover that one particular aspect of security. You do it for one CDN, but you forget to do for the other. And then the traffic is routed to that particular CDN, which in turns makes your application vulnerable to those kind of attacks. Now, this is an example where we saw for a particular CDN, we started seeing spike in time, and what we identified that missing WAF rule at that particular application WAF's configuration actually caused end user not able to connect to their application. And let's not forget bot detection. Now, we have a lot of tools out there in the market which does a pretty good job in terms of identifying the bots, detect it or block it. But one important piece which often gets unnoticed is, are you doing it the right way? Now, this is an example where one of our customers were trying to implement some rules at their WAF and bot detection, and they made changes at the network layer where they started blocking requests for a specific subnet for Cogent ISP, right? That was done in good intent for considering for bot request, but it actually ended up causing actual end users who were trying to access the application getting blocked, right? So you could see in this graph, only end users coming in from Cogent ISP in Boston and in Atlanta were having issues. One more example, a legitimate request turned into a bot, considered as bot, blacklisted. And we can see from traceroute data, the traffic started to go to the Prolexic data center, and eventually those got blocked. So it reminds of us of a good learning, that it's good and it's important to have these bot detection mechanism, but it's also important to understand if any of these rules, any of these changes, what you're doing with application or at bot detection or WAF is not impacting your actual end users.
And I think that's a very valid point, Ankit. I mean, we spoke a lot about security measures, threats, and mitigation that happen outside an organization. But when I was just going over the importance of DevSecOps, one of the things that I took away is that it's important that the dev teams and the security teams not work in silo. And here's an excellent example that we were able to kind of use to attest to that. So here's a transaction test that we use, which captures user workflows. So a user logs in, accesses the application and log out, and that's the data that you're looking at. And you'll see that there's a whole big block of red failures. And this happened because there was a communication that was sent out by the security team that was completely missed by the developer team. And this makes it all the more important and also shows that following the principles of DevSecOps is very profound. So here what happened was that the security teams was trying to enforce multi-factor authentication. And so they added some additional security screens at the beginning. However, the developer teams were not aware of it. They missed the memo because of silo issues, and they forgot to account for this in their development cycles. Thus, what happened was that when the new screen was introduced, we started sending out a lot of alerts from Catchpoint. And the dev team became aware of it. They spoke to the security team, came to know that there was additional screens that were added. But unfortunately, they had to roll back the security update because the dev team was still not prepared. And there were users that was frustrated because the workflow was completely different and they weren't notified. Similar to that, I mean, this is one other excellent example of, working in silos or lack of communication that happens. And again, the importance of following DevSecOps rules is, here's an example where we had the development team working on a project to move domain-based localized URLs to incorporating the locale in the URL itself. So if you take a look at the example on top, you see it's discussions China, which shows a localized domain, versus what they were moving to was /fr/welcome, which has the locale, which is FR for France, within the URL itself. So this was the effort that was underway. But they had to kind of stall this effort in China because of some additional efforts that were required in China. We always know that making an application available in China and perform it is a challenge. So they had to kind of stall that effort in China alone, but the effort was underway everywhere else. And when they were completely rolling out this change, what happened is that the security team added the WAF rules for the new URL for all the sites, and they removed the ones for the old one, and they didn't account for the exception of China. So as soon as this happened, we saw that the application became completely inaccessible in China. So you will see that China is in red, everywhere else it was in green. And because Catchpoint was able to, because we're doing synthetic monitoring ongoing, and it's always probing your applications, we were immediately able to see that users were not able to access the application from China. So we were able to send out an alert, and that was used by the security team to make the necessary changes to the WAF rules. So yeah, we've spoken a lot about the visibility aspect that end user monitoring provides. But at the same time, it is interesting that it can also help with being an early signal into security issues. I kind of chanced upon this when I attended a cybersecurity webinar recently, and Danny Allen, who's the Chief Technical Officer at VM Software, he was asked this question about how secure are you against cybersecurity attacks? So he said that he kind of takes that question and reframes that to his team and asks them two main questions. The first being, are we more secure today than we were yesterday? So comparison to the historical data. And the second one being, are we being more proactive than reactive? The second point is something that I could really resonate with, because at Catchpoint, one of the ways we do end user monitoring is this approach of synthetic and proactive monitoring, where we are constantly probing your applications and collecting data. So with this, what happens is that we're able to detect any deviations that happen. With proactive synthetic monitoring, we are constantly probing servers, performing key user transactions, collecting metrics about the network, about the infrastructure. Therefore, the system is aware of a lot of baselines regarding your infrastructure, regarding your systems. And so it can quickly sound an alarm when any metric goes astray. And once the team has some alerts configured, remediation is something that becomes immediately, comes into place immediately, which is what is very key in security. So taking a look at this one example here, you'll see that there was a layer 7 or application layer attack. The application layer attack, as you all know, it targets the OSI model, the application layer of the OSI model, where the most common requests are the HTTP requests that make up bulk of the traffic on the internet. These layer 7 attacks, what they do is they result in a consumption of server resources as well as the network, and therefore they prevent legitimate users from accessing your applications hosted on your servers. So in this example, you'll see that the wait time, which is basically the server response time, has spiked up. So all the spikes that you see is basically the server response time, and this in turn resulted in the server resources being exhausted and the legitimate requests being completely denied. Here's another example, and this one's happening at the SSL layer. So you're looking at the metric called as the SSL metric, which is the SSL handshake time. And here is an example of a SSL flood attack. And you'll notice that there's a really nice pattern to it. So in addition to getting early signals, what you can also pick up on is a pattern to the attack. There was a surge in the flood at specific hours, and then there was a dip, and the same thing again. And this is why baselines become extremely crucial, because it helps you to appreciate the deviations and act on it. In addition to catching these early signals, one of the other more important things when it comes to security is, especially when you're under an attack, is isolating the attacks and knowing what attack vectors are being used, what attack vectors are not being used. So going back to the SSL example again, and correlating it with some of the other metrics that we collect. So one thing at Catchpoint we do is we collect metrics that are very specific, and hence they're a great indication of the type of attack vectors being leveraged. So for instance, when an HTTP request is made, in addition to telling you what is the end-to-end server response time, we break that down. We tell you how long did it take to resolve the DNS? How long did it take to connect to the server? What was the SSL handshake time? What was the server think time? So each of these are separate metrics, because of which isolation becomes very, very interesting. So in this case, if you take a look at it, we're plotting the server response time at the top, and at the bottom, we're looking at the SSL handshake time. And you see that there's a direct correlation between the pattern that we see with the response time and the SSL pattern. So we can quickly say that the attack vector being leveraged is at the SSL layer. So perhaps an SSL flood. So that's something that you can infer. At the same time, going back to the application layer attack that we discussed, here what we're doing is we're plotting the connect time, which is the TCP handshake time, and also we're looking at the server response time. So you see here that the server response time definitely shot up, but at the same time, what we can say here is what attack vector is not being used, because you're not seeing any deviations in the connect time or the TCP handshake time. We can say for sure that it's, for instance, not a sync flood. So that's something that we can say confidently in this case.
Thanks, Navya. I think we took a look at some of the examples, which actually provides a lot of visibility. But one important question still is posed in front of organization is, what are you doing to make sure you're ready for any of these challenges, right? As Navya pointed out, the only two question is, are you more secure than yesterday? And are you proactive or reactive? So let's look into some of the methods what organization chooses today. This is one example where we have a red team versus blue team approach, pretty much white glove approach, where one team acts as an attacker and the other team acts as defender, and they try to understand if a similar set of attack is presented on their application, how does the application behaves, right? It also helps them to understand and to verify all the DDoS mitigation mechanism what they have in place, or the WAF security what they have in place. Are they responding in a certain manner or not, right? So this is basically making them prepare for the worst, and for a massive DDoS attack, or any kind of SQL injection or cross-site scripting attack, and to make sure their application is ready to go against it. All right, so we have spoken about certain examples. We have looked into some best practices. So what we have understood, often end user experience monitoring is categorized into predominantly availability and performance. But the examples what we have gone through today, which really brings us or an end user experience monitoring tool into the DevSecOps pipeline, and then trying to solve the missing piece in the entire puzzle. That's pretty much it. Hopefully we have answered some of the questions related to missing pieces in DevSecOps lifecycle, especially related to end user experience monitoring. We would like to thank everyone for their time, and we are open for questions.